The leather chair in my office still had that new car smell. I ran my fingers across its smooth surface, remembering a time when the only chair I owned was a beaten-up folding metal one I'd found in a dumpster. 15 years is a long time. Long enough to go from homeless to CEO. Long enough to build an empire. And apparently, long enough for my father to forget why he threw me out in the first place. "Miss Carter?" My assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your father is here for the 2 p.m. appointment." I touched the intercom button, fighting the urge to cancel. "Send him in, Julia." The door opened, and suddenly I was 18 again, standing in our driveway as my father threw garbage bags filled with my belongings onto the wet pavement. But this time, I wasn't the one who looked scared. Robert Carter, CEO of Carter Industries, stood in my doorway, looking nothing like the towering figure who had dominated my childhood. His tailored suit couldn't hide how much weight he'd lost, and his perfectly styled hair couldn't disguise the new gray at his temples. "Victoria," he said, trying to sound confident. "You look successful." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Have a seat, Mr. Carter." The formal address made him flinch. "Could." He sat down, immediately reaching into his briefcase. "I have the loan application you requested. All the financials, projections, everything your team asked for." I took the folder but didn't open it. Instead, I studied the man who had once told me I'd never amount to anything. 15 years is a long time. He shifted uncomfortably. "Victoria, about that night. The night you threw me out." I kept my voice calm, professional. "The night you said I was worthless because I wanted to study computer science instead of joining the family business." "I was wrong," he said quickly. "Too quickly. I see that now. What you've built here." He gestured around my office. "It's impressive." I almost laughed. Impressive didn't begin to cover it. While he had been running his traditional manufacturing company into the ground, I had built ByteForge into one of the most successful tech companies in the country. The office he was sitting in was just one floor of a 50-story building I owned. "Why are you really here?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. He straightened in his chair, slipping into business mode. "Carter Industries is facing some temporary cash flow issues. We need capital to modernize our facilities, adapt to changing markets. The banks." He paused, swallowing hard. "They won't extend any more credit. And Olivia can't help." His face darkened at the mention of my younger sister. "Your sister is?" Occupied with her own concerns. Of course she was. Olivia, the perfect daughter who had followed his every command, was probably too busy running the company into the ground alongside him to help fix their mistakes. "The loan we're requesting," he continued, "is relatively modest. $50 million would be enough too." "50 million?" I interrupted. "That's modest." He flushed. "Given your company's recent valuations." I opened my laptop, pulling up Carter Industries financials. "Your company lost $80 million last quarter. Your stock has dropped 60% in the past year. And according to this, you've already mortgaged most of your assets." I closed the laptop. $50 million wouldn't even begin to fix your problems. We just need time to implement our turnaround strategy. The same strategy that's been failing for the past 5 years. His professional facade cracked. "Damn it, Victoria. This is your family's legacy we're talking about. Your grandfather built this company from nothing. And you're the one who destroyed it," I said quietly, "just like you tried to destroy me." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with 15 years of hurt and anger. I closed my eyes, remembering that night. I had just graduated high school, full of dreams about college and the future. I'd been accepted to NIT on a full scholarship, ready to study computer science and change the world. But that wasn't what my father had planned for me. "The family business needs you," he had said over dinner. "MIT? Computers? That's not a real future. You'll join Carter Industries, learn from the ground up like I did." When I refused, when I dared to have dreams of my own, his rage had been terrible to behold. "If you walk out that door," he has shouted, "don't ever come back. You'll end up homeless, begging on streets. You're nothing without this family." I had walked out anyway, believing in myself even when no one else did. The first few months had been harder than I'd ever admit to him. Living in a tiny dorm room, working 3 jobs between classes, eating ramen noodles and whatever I could afford from the dollar store. But I had made it. Every hardship, every sleepless night, every missed meal had just fueled my determination to succeed. The idea for ByteForge had come during my junior year. I noticed how many traditional businesses were struggling to adapt to the digital age. So I started small, building websites and basic apps for local companies. By graduation, I had a client list and a vision. The real breakthrough came when I developed our flagship product, an AI-driven platform that helped traditional businesses modernize their operations. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had created exactly what Carter Industries needed, but they had been too stubborn to see it. "Victoria," my father's voice pulled me back to the present. The loan. I opened the folder, finally looking at the application. Everything was there: financial statements, business plans, collateral offerings. But one detail caught my eye. "You're offering 40% of Carter Industries as collateral?" He nodded stiffly. "It shows how serious we are about this opportunity." Opportunity. That's what this was to him. Not an admission of failure, not an apology for the past, just another business opportunity. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city. Somewhere out there was the dumpster where I'd found that folding chair, the dollar store where I'd bought my meals, the library where I'd spent countless hours learning to code because I couldn't afford a laptop. "Do you remember what you said to me that night?" I asked, still facing the window. "You said I was nothing without the family." I was angry, he protested. "I didn't mean." "Yes, you did." I turned back to face him. "You meant every word. And now here you are, 15 years later, proving that you were wrong. I became something without the family. More than something. And now you need my help to save what's left of your empire." His face flushed with anger, but he kept his voice steady. "Yes, I need your help. Is that what you want to hear?" Your father admitting he was wrong. "No," I said quietly. What I wanted was a father who believed in me, who supported my dreams instead of trying to force his own on me, who loved me for who I was, not what I could do for the family business. I picked up the loan application and walked around the desk until I was standing in front of him. Slowly, deliberately, I took out a red stamp and pressed it onto the first page. "INSUFFICIENT insufficient for NILT." His face went white as he read the words. "That's not," he started. "Familiar?" I finished for him. "It should be. Those are the exact words you used when I asked you for help during my first year of college. When I was working 3 jobs and barely eating." He stood up, his hands shaking. "You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching me beg?" "No, Dad. I don't enjoy seeing anyone beg. But I do believe in consequences. You chose to throw me out. You chose to cut me off completely. And now, you're facing the consequences of those choices. The company will go under, he said quietly. Everything your grandfather built. Grandfather built a company that adapted to its time. I cut in. You're the one who refused to change, who ignored the digital revolution, who thought traditional methods would work forever, just like you thought you could control my life forever. I handed him back the folder. The answer is no, not just to the loan, but to any future requests. Carter Industries will sink or swim on its own merits. He clutched the folder, knuckles white. You're making a mistake. I smiled, remembering all the times he had said those exact words to me. No, Dad. For the first time in my life where you're concerned, I'm absolutely certain I'm making the right choice. As he turned to leave, I called after him. Dad? He paused at the door. Give my best to Olivia. Tell her if she ever wants to learn about modern business practices, my door is open. Unlike some people, I don't believe in abandoning family. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me alone in my office. I walked back to my chair, my expensive, leather, new car-smelling chair, and sat down. Julia's voice came through the intercom. Miss Carter? Your 3 p.m. is here. The merger team from Singapore? I took a deep breath, pushing away the echoes of the past. Send them in. The day wasn't over. I had an empire of my own to run. One built not on family obligations and outdated traditions, but on innovation, determination, and the unshakable belief in my own worth. My father had thrown me out with nothing but a few garbage bags of belongings. Now I had everything he had ever wanted: success, respect, power. And I had earned every bit of it myself. But this was just the beginning. What my father didn't know was that his visit had set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. His desperate attempt to save Carter Industries would have consequences he never could have imagined. The real story was just beginning. The news broke 3 days after my father's visit. Carter Industries stelkikis PLUMET ANID FAID VUNDIG AT18 screamed the headlines. I watched the business networks dissect my father's failures from my private gym on the top floor of Byte Forge Tower, maintaining a steady pace on my treadmill as reporters speculated about the company's future. My phone buzzed. Olivia. How dare you? My sister's voice crackled with rage. Do you have any idea what you've done? I adjusted the treadmill's speed, not breaking stride. Good morning to you too, Olivia. I assume Dad told you about our meeting. The stock has dropped another 30%. Investors are pulling out. And you just sat there and watched him beg. I thought about the last time I'd seen Olivia. At a charity gala 2 years ago. She pretended not to recognize me, turning away when our eyes met across the room. Now suddenly, I was family again. Tell me something, I said, slowing my pace. When Dad threw me out, when I was struggling through college, where were you? Silence. That's what I thought. That was different, she protested. You chose to leave. You abandoned the family business. No, I cut her off. I chose to follow my own path. Dad's the one who made it an ultimatum. And you just stood there and watched. I was 17, old enough to know right from wrong, old enough to call your sister to check if she was okay, to offer help. But you didn't. You took my place as the perfect daughter and never looked back. I heard her take a shaky breath. Fine, you're right. I should have. But that's the past. This is now. The company is dying, Victoria. Everything grandfather built is already gone. I finished. Dad killed it years ago when he refused to adapt. The numbers don't lie, Olivia. Carter Industries has been dead for years. You've just been propping up the corpse. Then help us fix it, she pleaded. You've built this amazing tech company. You know how to modernize. Goodbye, Olivia. I hung up, just as Julia appeared in the gym's doorway. Miss Carter? The board of Carter Industries is requesting an emergency meeting. They're offering to sell controlling interest for 30 cents on the dollar. I stepped off the treadmill, wiping my face with a towel. What's our analysis team say? Even at that price, it's risky. Their infrastructure is outdated, their contracts are underwater, and their intellectual property is practically worthless. I nodded, declined the meeting. But I paused, a plan forming. Keep monitoring their stock, and get me everything you can on their major contracts, especially the Morgan account. The Morgan account, my father's pride and joy, $100 million manufacturing contract that had been with Carter Industries for 3 generations. If that fell through, also, I added, schedule a lunch with James Morgan for next week. Julia's eyes widened slightly as she caught my meaning, but she simply nodded and left. Back in my office after a shower, I found 3 voicemails from board members of Carter Industries, each more desperate than the last. They knew what I knew. Without an injection of capital and technology, the company was finished. My computer pinged with a news alert. I clicked it open and felt my breath catch. Carter Industries CEO Roberto Crtr Hospitalized after COLLAPSE. For a moment, I was that 18-year-old girl again, desperately wanting her father's approval. Then I remembered his words, "You'll end up homeless. You're nothing without this family." I picked up my phone and dialed. Mount Sinai Hospital. How may I direct your call? Robert Carter's room, please. One moment. I'm sorry, but Mr. Carter is only accepting immediate family visitors. I smiled bitterly. That's fine. I'm not calling to visit. Please tell him that Victoria Carter, CEO of ByteForge, received his board's offer. My answer is still no. There was a pause. I'll pass along the message. I hung up, knowing the message would hurt him more than any physical ailment. His precious company was collapsing, and his disarmed daughter held the power to save or destroy it. The next week passed in a blur of meetings and decisions, but lunch with James Morgan stood out. The elderly man had known my grandfather, had watched me grow up at family functions and business events. Victoria, he said warmly, embracing me at the restaurant, you've done incredibly well for yourself. Over lobster and wine, we discussed the changing business landscape, the need for modernization, the importance of adapting to new technologies. I never once mentioned Carter Industries, but I didn't need to. Your father, James said finally, setting down his wine glass, is a proud man. Too proud. He's refused our suggestions to upgrade systems, integrate new technologies. The delays are costing us millions. I nodded sympathetically. The manufacturing sector can be challenging to modernize. That's actually why I developed ByteForge's industrial automation platform. His eyes lit up. The one that reduced processing time by 60% for Stevens manufacturing. The same. I pulled out my tablet, showing him the interface. We've actually expanded its capabilities since then. By the time dessert arrived, James Morgan was sold. He didn't say it explicitly, but but I knew Carter Industries had just lost their biggest account. The next morning, Olivia burst into my office, bypassing security somehow. "What did you do?" she screamed, waving her phone. "Morgan is canceling their contract. Do you have any idea what this means?" I looked up calmly from my computer. "It means they're making a sound business decision. Something Dad never understood." "He's still in the hospital," she said, her voice breaking. "The doctors say it's his heart." The stress of his own choices," I corrected. "The stress of refusing to change, of driving away anyone who disagreed with him, of watching his outdated methods fail in a modern world. He's our father. Is he?" I stood up, walking around my desk to face her. "Because 15 years ago, he made it very clear that I wasn't his daughter anymore. That I was nothing. Remember?" She faltered. "He didn't mean." "Yes, he did. And you know what? He was right about one thing. I was nothing to him. But that didn't stop me from becoming something amazing on my own." "Please," she whispered. "Help us. Help him." I studied my sister's face, seeing real fear there for the first time. "You want my help? Fine. Here's my offer. Byteforge will acquire Carter Industries." Her eyes widened. "What?" "A complete takeover. We'll modernize the facilities, retrain the workforce, integrate our technology. The Carter name stays, but the company becomes a Byteforge subsidiary. Dad will never agree to that. Dad doesn't have a choice anymore. The company's worth a quarter of what it was last year, and that's being generous." Without the Morgan contract, I shrugged. "This is my final offer, Olivia. Take it or watch everything collapse." She stared at me for a long moment. "You planned this, didn't you?" "All of it. Meeting with Morgan, waiting until we were desperate. I learned from the best," I said coldly. "Dad taught me that business is business. Family doesn't matter, remember?" Olivia left without another word, but I knew she'd be back. The numbers were too clear, the situation too dire. They needed me now, just like I had needed them 15 years ago. The difference was I had succeeded without their help. They wouldn't succeed without mine. That evening, as I worked late in my office, Julia brought me a special delivery, a small worn leather box. "This was just dropped off by courier," she said, "from Mount Sinai Hospital." Inside was a gold pocket watch and a handwritten note. "Victoria, this was your grandfather's. He gave it to me the day I took over the company. Said it would remind me that time changes everything. I didn't understand then. I do now." "Dad," I held the watch, remembering how it had sat on my grandfather's desk, ticking away the minutes as he taught me about business, about innovation, about being brave enough to try new things. The irony wasn't lost on me. Everything was coming full circle. But this wasn't the end of the story. My father's gesture with the watch wasn't surrender. It was a move in a game that was far from over. What would happen next would shake both our companies to their foundations and force everyone to confront hard truths about family, loyalty, and the true cost of success. The real battle was just beginning. The takeover wasn't going to be clean. I knew that the moment I walked into the Carter Industries board meeting, my grandfather's pocket watch heavy in my blazer pocket. 15 board members sat around the massive oak table, most of them the same men who had watched my father throw me out 15 years ago. None of them would meet my eyes. My father's seat at the head of the table was conspicuously empty. He was still in the hospital, though rumors suggested it was now more about avoiding public appearances than actual health concerns. "Let's begin," I said, taking the CEO's chair. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Olivia sat to my right, pale but composed. We had spent the last week negotiating terms. Though negotiating might be too generous a word. She had no leverage, and we both knew it. The terms are simple, I continued, nodding to Julia to distribute the documents. Byteforge will acquire Carter Industries at current market value. All existing employees will be retained during the transition period, subject to performance reviews and retraining requirements. And management? One of the older board members, Harrison Peters, spoke up. He had been my father's friend for 30 years. Current management will be evaluated based on their willingness to adapt to new methodologies. I met his gaze steadily. Those unwilling to change will be offered generous retirement packages. The threat was clear: adapt or leave. This is robbery, another board member muttered. The company's worth 10 times this amount. It was, I corrected. Before years of mismanagement and technological stagnation. Before losing the Morgan contract. Before your stock became practically worthless. I pulled out my tablet, projecting Carter Industries' financials onto the wall screen. Your company will be bankrupt within 3 months without this deal. Byteforge is offering you a lifeline. A hostile takeover, you mean? Harrison snapped. I smiled, taking out my grandfather's pocket watch and placing it on the table. No, Mr. Peters. Hostile would be letting you sink and buying the remains at auction. This is mercy. The room fell silent as they stared at the watch. They all recognized it, the symbol of Carter Industries' leadership, passed down through generations. Your father, Harrison began. My father sent me this. I cut in. He understands what you don't. The past is gone. Adapt or die. One by one, they signed the papers. Even Harrison, though his hand shook with either age or anger. Just as the last signature was being added, the boardroom door burst open. My father stood there, still in his hospital gown under a hastily donned suit jacket, an IV bruise visible on his hand. Stop, he commanded, his voice weaker than I remembered, but still carrying authority. Nobody sign anything else. You're too late, I said quietly. It's done. He staggered forward, gripping the back of a chair for support. Victoria, please. Not like this. Then how? I stood up, facing him. How should it be? Should I have let you run grandfather's company into the ground? Should I have watched everything he built crumble because of your pride? I made mistakes, he admitted, and for the first time, I heard real remorse in his voice. With the company, with you, I see that now. Now, I laughed bitterly. Now that you have no choice. Now that you've lost everything? Not everything. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an old, creased envelope. I've carried this since the day you left. Every time you succeeded, every time I saw your name in the news, I wanted to send it. I took the envelope. Inside was a letter, dated the day after he threw me out. The paper was worn, the creases deep from being folded and unfolded countless times. My dearest Victoria, it began. I was wrong. My anger, my pride, my fear of change, they made me drag away the one person who could have saved this company. Who could have saved me? I stopped reading, my vision blurring. It's 15 years too late, I said, but my voice lacked its earlier steel. I know. He sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 65 years. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to save what's left of this company. Not for me, but for the thousands of employees who depend on it. For grandfather's legacy. I looked around the room. The board members, Olivia, Julia, they were all watching this drama unfold in silence. Byteforge will take control, I said finally. We'll modernize, digitize, bring Carter Industries into the 21st century, non-negotiable. He nodded slowly. But I continued, fingering the pocket watch. We'll need someone who understands the old ways while we implement the new. Someone who can help ease the transition. Hope flickered in his eyes. A consulting position, I specified. No executive power, no board seat. You'll advise only, and only if you prove you can adapt. And Olivia? I turned to my sister, who had remained unusually quiet. That depends on her. Byteforge values talent and adaptability. If she's willing to learn, to change. I am, she said quickly. Too quickly. We'll see. I picked up the watch and held it out to my father. This belongs to you until the transition is complete. Don't make me regret this chance. He took it with trembling hands. I won't. I promise. 6 months later, I stood on the factory floor of what was now Carter Byteforge Industries. The old assembly lines had been replaced with state-of-the-art robotics. Workers who had once feared technology now operated sophisticated computer systems. The company's stock had tripled since the takeover. My father had surprised everyone, including himself. Once freed from the burden of running everything, he threw himself into learning new technologies. His experience combined with our innovation had created something remarkable. Olivia had surprised me too. After initial resistance, she had become one of our most enthusiastic modernizers, especially after seeing the results. She now headed our Industrial Innovation Division, having earned the position through genuine merit. Miss Carter, Julia appeared at my side. Your father's here for your weekly meeting. I nodded, touching the pocket watch that now hung on a chain around my neck. He had returned it last month, saying it belonged with the true future of the company. In my office, he waited with a tablet in hand, eager to show me his latest ideas for improving production efficiency. The years seemed to have fallen away from him, his enthusiasm for learning making him almost boyish. Victoria, he said, standing as I entered. He still struggled sometimes with how to act around me, daughter, boss, both. Dad, I replied, and watched him try to hide his smile at the word. Show me what you've got. As he walked me through his presentation, I thought about that night 15 years ago, about garbage bags in the rain, about harsh words and slammed doors. You'll end up homeless, he had said. You're nothing without this family. He had been wrong about me being nothing. But maybe, just maybe, he had been right about family. Not in the way he meant then, but in the way we were discovering now. Not as a chain to bind us, but as a foundation to build upon. Not as a limitation, but as a strength. The company hadn't just been saved. It had been reborn through a combination of his experience and my innovation, through pain and pride and forgiveness, through change. I touched the pocket watch again, feeling its steady tick against my chest. Time changes everything, my grandfather had said. Sometimes it destroys, sometimes it heals, sometimes it does both. So what do you think? My father asked, finishing his presentation. I smiled, remembering all the times he had dismissed my ideas. Now he waited nervously for my approval, this proud man who had learned humility the hard way. I think, I said slowly, grandfather would be proud of both of us. He blinked rapidly, nodding. We didn't hug. We weren't there yet, might never be. But as we turned to discuss the future of our company, I felt something I hadn't felt in 15 years. The possibility of family being more than a wound to heal from. The possibility of it being a strength to build upon. Outside my office window, the sun set behind Byte Forge Tower, its light reflecting off the newly installed Carter Byte Forge logo. Somewhere out there was a dumpster with an old folding chair, a reminder of where I'd started. And somewhere, I liked to think, my grandfather was watching, his pocket watch in hand, smiling at how time had changed everything. Not all endings need to be endings. Sometimes they're just new beginnings in disguise. And this beginning, it was already better than anything I could have imagined when I walked away 15 years ago. Better because it was earned, not given. Better because it was built on truth, not obligation. Better because it proved that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's success on your own terms. And maybe, just maybe, it's finding a way to bring everyone else along with you, once they're ready to change. The watch ticked steadily against my chest, counting out the moments of this new chapter. Time changes everything, yes. But sometimes, if you're very lucky, it changes things for the better.